Want to curse your enemies with necrotic magic? Easy. Need to bring your friend back from beyond the veil? No problem.
What happened?
You could even create your own undead band that plays your theme song whenever you walk into a room. Needless to say, Necromancers are super fun to play. So, let's show you how to build one in D&D 5th edition. The goal with this build is to create an effective melee Necromancer who is supported by their undead minions. If you want a more classic take on the Necromancer build, I have made another video that you can check out somewhere in the corners or at least linked in the description. As for this build, we're going to be going for a more tanky necrotic caster similar to that of the Lich King from Warcraft. And in that same vein, I decided to call this build the Death Knight. This is a multi-class build that combines 3 classes: the Cleric, the Warlock, and the Wizard. Specifically, we put 9 levels into the Hexblade Warlock, 6 levels into the Necromancy Wizard, and the final 5 levels into the War Cleric. I'll talk about the order we picked these classes later on, but for now, let's just break down why we chose those classes, starting off with the Hexblade Warlock. There are 3 main reasons I picked the Hexblade Warlock. Firstly, pact magic. Warlock spellcasting works pretty differently from other spellcasters, having only a couple of spell slots to work with of a specific level, but they do recharge on a short rest. And at 9th level, a Warlock happens to have 2 5th level spell slots, meaning that any spell they cast using a Warlock spell slot will be cast automatically at 5th level. You might see where this is going, but I'll talk about why that matters in a minute. The second reason is because of their Pact Boon and Hexblade features: Hex Warrior, Hexblade's Curse, and Accursed Spectre. I'm sure most of you watching this probably know what the Pact of the Blade is, but effectively, it turns your weapon magical. This, coupled with the Hex Warrior and Hexblade's Curse, you're going to be dealing a lot of damage using your Charisma modifier, and not to mention the extra healing you get from Hexblade's Curse. And Accursed Spectre is pretty much just a free undead you can summon whenever you slay a monster. But the third reason we put so many levels into Warlock is because of the Eldritch Invocations we can pick. At 9th level, Warlocks get a total of 5 Eldritch Invocations, and 4 of those are necessary for the build. Those being Eldritch Mind, Improved Pact Weapon, Thirsting Blade, and Life Drinker. Eldritch Mind gives us advantage on concentration saving throws, which, as a melee combatant, is super important. Improved Pact Weapon allows us to gain the Hex Warrior benefits with our greatsword and add a +1 to hit and damage rolls. Thirsting Blade allows us to attack twice whenever you take the attack action, and Life Drinker allows you to deal extra necrotic damage every time you hit, equal to your Charisma modifier. The last invocation isn't really necessary, but I took Fiendish Vigor just for some extra hit points. Now that's pretty much the main core of the build, but we can build further on top of that core with the Necromancy Wizard. These 6 levels in the Necromancy Wizard subclass are pretty much necessary for any Necromancer build because it gives 2 amazing features alongside full caster spell slots. The 2 features I am referring to are Grim Harvest at 2nd level and Undead Thralls at 6th level. I don't know why that was difficult. Grim Harvest allows you to, once per turn, whenever you kill a creature with a leveled spell, heal double the spell's level or triple the spell's level if it was a Necromancy spell. Considering we're a Necromancer, there's a pretty good chance that we'll be using Necromancy spells, so it's pretty much free healing. For example, if you cast a 3rd level Fireball, you would heal 6 HP. But if you cast a 3rd level Spirit Shroud, which is a Necromancy spell, you would heal 9 HP. Since this happens once per turn, this can very quickly add up for some nice additional healing. Now the 6th level feature, Undead Thralls, is the entire reason we commit so much to Necromancy Wizard. All of its focus is on your undead minions. First, we automatically learn Animate Undead if we don't already know it, although chances are we probably will. Second, all of our undead creatures gain our wizard level in extra hit points, and as a 6th level wizard, that would be 6 extra hit points, which is nothing to scoff at. Third, all undead creatures we create add your proficiency bonus to all of their damage rolls. This adds at least an extra 3 to 6 damage every time they hit, depending upon your level. And the 4th and final benefit is every time we cast Animate Dead, we get an extra zombie or skeleton. This feature alone is pretty core to any Necromancer build you want to make, but the best part about it is that it buffs every single undead minion we create using a necromancy spell. Now, this might be up to DM discretion, but those benefits only affect minions that you create using a necromancy spell, meaning the level 6 Warlock feature Accursed Spectre that creates an undead under your control wouldn't technically be affected. And while technically it wouldn't work, as a DM I would be pretty lenient with that one because it kinda makes sense. But keep that in mind if you're really set on this build, that make sure you talk to your DM first. But even if they do say no, this is still very easily worth the 6 levels we commit to it. But finally, we have the War Cleric. Like the Warlock before it, the Cleric has 3 main reasons why I committed 5 levels to it. The first and most important reason is that they automatically gain proficiency with heavy armor and martial weapons. This allows us to wear full plate armor and wield a greatsword, which is exactly what I would expect from a Death Knight. The second reason is because the War Cleric's War Priest feature and Channel Divinity. Being a War Priest allows you to make an attack as a bonus action whenever you make an attack action, and Channel Divinity can help us land important strikes. But the third reason we decided to go Cleric is mainly because it is a full caster, meaning that we would get full spellcasting spell slots when we level up. To be honest, the Cleric is the most expendable class in this build with the exception of the first level. I played around with some martial classes like the Oathbreaker Paladin or even the Eldritch Knight Fighter, but ultimately I decided that the full spellcasting slots you get from being a Cleric is just too worth it. But those last 4 levels in Cleric aren't really necessary, so if you wanted to mess around with this a little bit, Cleric's where you have your wiggle room. Now, before we move on to race, I just wanted to quickly call attention to the fact that, you know, there's a subscribe button right there. There. Right there. Click it. Anyways, what about the race? To be honest, it really doesn't necessarily matter for this build, but I picked out 3 that could work pretty well. First, the Shaddark High Elf. Mainly, I like this because of the Blessing of the Raven Queen that it gets. It allows you to teleport as a bonus action up to 30 feet a number of times per day based on your level, and when you do this, you gain resistance to all damage, which is absolutely massive. The second race I like for this is the Aasimar because of the Necrotic Shroud transformation they get. Effectively, it causes creatures to become frightened of you and allows you to deal extra necrotic damage when you hit an enemy once per turn. Definitely fits the theme of the Death Knight if you ask me. But the third option I chose is a bit out there, and it's really just for one specific feature that I like and think would work perfectly for the build, and that would be the Shifter. When you shift into another beast form, you have options to gain one of 4 different benefits, but the benefit I really like is called Wild Hunt. This gives you advantage on all wisdom checks, but the important part of the feature is that no creature within 30 feet of you can ever gain advantage on attack against you unless you're incapacitated. And I don't know about you, but never letting my enemies get advantage sounds too good to be true. Honestly, I might have read it wrong, but I read it like 5 times and was surprised every time I read it, so yeah, it's nuts. Honestly though, like I mentioned, the race doesn't really matter. Personally, I'm a fan of the Shaddark High Elf because of the resistances, and I'm a huge fan of teleporting abilities, but honestly, I just wanted to give you some good options. But now let's talk about the feats. You see, I'm a size 11, and why'd I make that joke? Throughout this build, we have had 4 total opportunities to choose either a feat or an ability score improvement. While there are some awesome feats we could choose from, realistically, there is only one we absolutely need. And that feat is Tough. Since we have so many levels in Wizard, and the other classes we chose only have a D8 for a hit dice, we're pretty squishy in terms of overall health. But we can kind of fix that with the Tough feat by giving ourselves 2 extra hit points per level. By level 10, we have an additional 20 hit points, which is a pretty significant boost to our overall survivability. But aside from Tough, we really don't need another feat, so it's up to you whether you want any more. For this build, I did also decide to get Great Weapon Master because, let's be honest, Great Weapon Master is so good. But there are a couple of other feats worth mentioning, like the Initiate of High Sorcery and the Adept of the Black Robes, or even Shadow Touched and Savage Attacker. There's actually a good couple of feats that work really good with the Death Knight build, but some of you might value more raw stats, so as long as you pick up Tough, you at least have 3 other options. And now it's time we talk about spells. It's no secret that as a Necromancer, you're going to use Necromancy spells, especially with how our build works. so I'm only going to go over those spells and leave the rest up to you. The core of our build really only comes down to two main spells: Spirit Shroud and Animate Dead. Spirit Shroud is a concentration spell that lasts a minute, causing spirits to fly around you in a 10-foot radius. Any attack you deal in the area deals extra necrotic damage, as well as slows all enemies and reducing their movement speed by 10 feet. This is great. Not only are we dealing extra damage, but we're also keeping the enemies closer and slowed to make it easier for our slower undead minions to get their attacks in. Which brings me to Animate Dead. This summons 3 zombies or skeletons that obey your command for up to 24 hours. And that's pretty much it. Except the fact that we're a necromancy wizard, so we summon an extra zombie or skeleton based on the level, so really if you cast at a base level, you'd be summoning 4. But either way, that's the core of our entire build. But there are some other spells that you're definitely going to want to pick up too, like Wither and Bloom, Vampiric Touch, and Create Undead. Really, anything that summons minions or provides us with some extra tankiness is perfect for the Death Knight build because it synergizes with what this build wants to do, which is a great segue into these synergies. Since we want to fight alongside our undead minions in the fray, we clearly need to have some survivability. We kind of tried to circumvent that by picking up the tough feat, and also was why it's so important to opt for spells that heal while also dealing damage. Ideally, necromancy spells. This is because of the Wizard's Grim Harvest feature where we heal whenever we slay an enemy with a necromancy spell. So in the scenario where you cast Vampiric Touch, let's say you heal 6 hit points from the spell, but then you would heal an additional 9 on top of that thanks to Grim Harvest. But with that in mind, let's talk about why Spirit Shroud is so important in the build. It isn't because of the damage or the slowing effect. While those are nice bonuses, that's not the main reason. No, the main reason is because we cast it using our Warlock spell slot. And at 9th level, our Warlock spell slot happens to be 5th level spell slot. That means whenever you hit with a melee attack, you're dealing an additional 2d8 necrotic damage. And that's per hit, not per turn. So you realistically could be dealing an additional 6d8 per turn with 3 attacks thanks to Spirit Shroud alone. But the reason Spirit Shroud is the core is because it is a necromancy spell, meaning that whenever you make a melee attack and slay an enemy, you technically did so with a 5th level necromancy spell, meaning you would heal 15 hit points from Grim Harvest. And that works the same for Animate Dead or Create Undead. If any of your minions slay an enemy, you heal. The entire build is based on healing off slaying enemies. And since we picked up the Eldritch Mind Invocation, we have advantage on maintaining concentration, so it's unlikely that we're going to lose concentration on any of these spells. And on the off chance that we do lose concentration, we still have another Warlock spell slot. And if we're really unlucky and lose concentration on that, we still have our normal spell slots up to a 6th level. So the Death Knight pretty much starts out combat by animating undead, commanding them to attack on his first turn, and then on his second turn casting Spirit Shroud and running into the fray as a whirling dervish of necrotic energy. And with each fallen enemy you cut down, you become revitalized to continue on the fight. But now, let's finish this off with the build order, because it can get a little tricky. A lot of builds like this can take a long time to fully come online, which is why it's so important to me that we have a good base to start with. So, I started off with level 1, believe it or not, as a Cleric. This got me the weapon and armor proficiencies and 2 first level spell slots, which can really help carry the early Warlock levels. After that, I went 7 straight levels into Warlock. This gets us our core Hexblade features, and since we went 7 straight levels into Warlock, after only 1 level of Cleric, we're really not that far behind in overall power. After that, I dumped these 6 levels we needed into the Necromancy Wizard, which gets us our additional spell slots and our Grim Harvest feature by level 10 and Undead Thralls features by level 14. Realistically, once we hit level 10 and get our Grim Harvest feature, we pretty much have everything we absolutely need for this build, so anything past here is just nice to have. But after we put those wizard levels in, we put 2 more into Warlock to increase our Pack Magic spell slot to 5th level, get our final invocation, and then we round out the build with the last 4 levels of Cleric to get us our Channel Divinity and our 6th level spell slot. Like I mentioned earlier, the last 4 levels don't necessarily need to be Cleric, but I really didn't get anything from Wizard and I really wanted the extra spell slots, and Cleric has a bigger hit dice, so Cleric we got. But that's the Death Knight. Everything about this build works by Raw, and I've posted a link to the DnDBeyond character I made with this build in the description below in case you're interested and want to take a deeper look. If you liked this video, I would really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed, and if you really liked the video, consider becoming a member or a patron down below. Members and patrons both get access to all of my homebrew, which currently includes over 100 spells, 6 subclasses, all alongside a bunch of feats, magic items, and creatures for 5th edition that you can use to your table today. And I may or may not be working on a new subclass that may be very similar to the idea for this build. Either way, if you have any questions or thoughts about how I could have built this better, let me know in the comment section below. I read every comment, almost always reply, and who knows, I might even feature your comment in the next video. Thank you very much for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you on Friday.